Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. In this video, let us learn about specificity in case of selectors. Sometimes we may end up in a situation where more than one rules can target a given element and these rules can have conflict in styles. So let us understand how the browser figures out which rules should get applied. So let us head over to our HTML file and define a paragraph with the class of content and stuff some dummy content inside it. So write in our index.html file right after p.content and press tab, and here let us add lorem, then press tab. Now let us go back to our style sheet and add a couple of CSS rules for this paragraph. So let us see the transition from general to more specific, right? So let us comment all the CSS rules that we had written in the previous video and now give this a preview. So now you can see it's a simple HTML page with no styles at all, no colors, nothing. Now let us first use the type selector and define a general color for all our paragraphs, so P, and set the color to red. So we will make a transition from general to more specific styling, right? So let us give this a preview, and now you can see all our paragraphs are red in color. Next, let us add a rule for the elements with the class of content and give this a color of lime green and give this a preview. So now you can see the paragraph with the class of content is getting the green color instead of the general red color that we defined for all our paragraphs, right? So you can see that both these rules that we just defined target the paragraph element, but here's the question: why this rule is getting applied for the paragraph with the class of content and not this one? Now this is where specificity of selectors comes into picture. Each selector that we use has something called as specificity or weight. This means that if multiple CSS rules target the same element, just like in our case, where this rule is also targeting our paragraph with the class of content and even this as well, the browser in this case will apply the rule that is more specific, right? Now in decreasing order of specificity, we first have the ID selector and it carries the most specificity. Now the reason for this is that we cannot have more than one elements on our page with the same ID. We can only target a single element using the ID selector, right? Now next to this, we have the class and attribute selectors. Now these selectors are less specific compared to the ID selectors because we can have multiple elements with the same class or attributes. Lastly, we have the type selector because we have many elements of different types. So the type selectors are the least specific, okay? So the answer for this is that this selector that is using the class of content is more specific than this type selector which is targeting the paragraph elements. So by this, our last paragraph that has the class of content will get the lime green color, right? Which we just saw a while back. Now other way to target this paragraph can be to use an ID selector. So head over to our HTML file and give this last paragraph an ID of content. So right here, let us add an ID of content. So for this paragraph, we are having an ID, which is content, and a class of content as well. So let us again target our paragraph element, but this time let us give a different color to our paragraph element to see if it gets applied or not. So here we can say hash content, and this time let us give the color as pink. Will the last paragraph get the pink color or will it get the lime green color? So let us give this a preview, and now you can see it gets the pink color, right? Because the ID selector is more specific than the class selector, which in turn is more specific than the type selector, right? Now if you hover over any of these CSS selectors, you can see the weight or specificity of each of these selectors. So in braces you can see the first number represents the number of ID selectors, which in this case is 1. As you can see, we are using a hash here. Then the second number right after this comma represents the number of class or attribute selectors, which in this case we have 0. Finally, the last number represents the number of element selectors, or you can say the type selectors, which in this case is 0 as well. So these three numbers represent the specificity of the selector, and for this it is 100, right? Which means that this selector carries the most weight and hence the styles for this gets applied to the last paragraph. Make sense? So this was all I wanted to cover about specificity of selectors. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more such videos. Let's catch up in the very next one, where we will learn about the inheritance in CSS.